In 1965, a country was thrown away. Not invaded, not bombed, not conquered. Thrown away. Like it was nothing. Like its 3 million people were a problem someone wanted off their desk. And the man who had to go on television and tell his people what had just happened to them. He could not finish the sentence. He sat in front of the entire nation and he wept. On live television, the most powerful man in Singapore, crying. Because in one night, without a vote, without a war, without even a warning, everything his people had believed about their future had been taken from them. And what happened next is the reason I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video. Because what this man built out of that moment of humiliation, out of that single night of betrayal, is one of the most extraordinary things any human being has ever done in the history of the modern world. And almost nobody outside of Asia knows the full story. The year is 1963, and Singapore is alive in the way that only port cities can be alive. Chinese merchants, Malay fishermen, Indian laborers, British colonial officers, all of them packed onto one small island at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula. The streets smell like frying garlic and diesel and salt water. Children in white uniforms run to school past old men playing checkers outside medicine shops. The harbor never sleeps. And the people of this island, they have finally found something to believe in. A federation, a family of nations. Malaysia. In 1963, Singapore officially joins the Federation of Malaysia. Legally, proudly, with flags and ceremonies and the genuine belief that this is the beginning of something permanent. For the first time, the people of this small island feel like they belong to something larger than themselves. They have a future. They have protection. Nobody sees what is coming. But underneath that dream, something is already cracking. Malaysia is a country held together by a dangerous arrangement that one race will always hold political power over the others. And Singapore does not fit that arrangement. Singapore is majority Chinese. Singapore's politicians are educated, ambitious, and they are winning elections. And Singapore's leader, a Cambridge-educated lawyer named Lee Kuan Yew, he is constitutionally incapable of staying quiet. He goes on national television and says 4 words that change everything. A Malaysian Malaysia, meaning a Malaysia that belongs equally to every race. Chinese, Malay, Indian, everyone. To the Malay political establishment in Kuala Lumpur, those 4 words are a direct attack on their power. They are not going to forget it. Then 1964 arrives, and the streets that once smelled like garlic and salt water now smell like smoke. Racial riots detonate across Singapore. 23 people dead, hundreds injured. Curfews, British soldiers with rifles on the street corners. And in Kuala Lumpur, the men in power are not trying to stop it. They are watching. Because a Singapore on fire is a Singapore that cannot challenge them. Behind closed doors, a decision is already being made. The Malay leadership has reached a conclusion. Singapore is too dangerous to keep inside Malaysia. Too Chinese. Too loud. Too politically threatening. And so they are going to remove it. Lee Kuan Yew is not invited to those meetings. He is not consulted. He is not negotiated with. On the night of August 8, 1965, he is called in and told that the decision is final. Singapore is being expelled from Malaysia, effective the following morning. He has less than 12 hours to prepare his people for the fact that the country they thought they were part of has just rejected them. The next morning, August 9, 1965, Lee Kuan Yew sits in front of a television camera. He is 42 years old. He has survived Japanese occupation, British colonialism, communist infiltration, racial bloodshed. He has never shown weakness in public. Not once. Not ever. He begins to speak. He tells his people that Singapore is now a sovereign, independent nation. He tells them this was not their choice. He tells them this was not what they wanted. And then, on live television, the most composed, most disciplined, most controlled political mind in Southeast Asia breaks. He cannot finish the sentence. His hand rises to cover his face. His voice is gone. He sits there, in silence, in front of his entire nation, and he weeps. Not because he is weak, because he understands, in that moment, exactly what his people are facing. This island has no water supply of its own. Every single drop comes through a pipeline from Malaysia, the same Malaysia that just threw them out. It has no military, no air force, no navy, nothing. Its unemployment rate is approaching 14%. Half the population lives in slums. The British military, which employs a huge portion of the workforce, is preparing to withdraw completely. 728 square kilometers of jungle and crowded streets. No oil, no gold, no farmland, no resources, no allies, no plan. Every foreign diplomat, every regional economist, every international observer looks at Singapore in August 1965 and says the same thing. This will not survive. It is too small, too poor, too divided, too alone. Give it a decade and it will dissolve. Lee Kuan Yew read every single one of those reports. And then he made a decision that rewrote the future of an entire region. He refused to accept the verdict. He looked at this tiny, impossible island, and he decided that if there were no resources, then the people themselves would become the resource. Every single one of them. He made English the common language, not to erase anyone's culture, but to create one neutral battlefield where every race could compete on equal terms. He built public housing at a speed the world had never seen, tearing down slums, moving families into clean concrete towers. Not elegant, but safe, functional, connected. He conscripted every young man into a national military, not because Singapore could win a war against its neighbors, but because every neighbor needed to understand that swallowing Singapore would be painful. He got on a plane and flew to meet every foreign investor, every multinational corporation, every international bank he could find. He did not beg. He made a proposition. Come to Singapore. You will find stability, rule of law, zero corruption, a workforce that is disciplined and educated and ready. We are small, but we are serious. And the world responded. First slowly, then in a flood. Within 1 decade, Singapore had one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. Within 2 decades, its citizens enjoyed a standard of living that rivaled Western Europe. Within 3 decades, the island that was expelled like an unwanted tenant had become the richest nation in Asia by GDP per capita. The same Malaysia that threw Singapore out today sends hundreds of thousands of its own citizens across the causeway every single morning to come and work in Singapore. The country that had no right to exist. The country that every expert said would fail. The country whose leader wept on television because he had been handed an impossible problem. That country became one of the most powerful financial centers on earth. And here is the part that the history books leave out. Lee Kuan Yew never stopped feeling it. Decades later, writing his memoirs as an old man, he returned to August 9, 1965, and he still could not write about it without the wound reopening. He called it the moment of anguish. Not anger, not bitterness, not triumph. Anguish, because he never wanted to be independent. He wanted to belong, and they took that from him. And he turned it into a nation that the entire world now studies in universities as a model of what is possible when one person refuses to accept that their people are finished. Being expelled was not the end of Singapore's story. It was the first sentence. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your country in the comments right now. I want to see every nation watching this. Because this story does not belong to Singapore alone. It belongs to every country that was ever told it was too small, too poor, too divided to matter. Share this video with one person today. One person who needs to be reminded that being thrown out is not a verdict. It is an invitation to prove every single person wrong.